My brother Jake doubts my pilot license again. After my rebirth, I know exactly what kind of pilot I really am. The emergency call pierces through the morning air at Alpine Rescue Base, its shrill tone making everyone freeze. I'm adjusting my headset when the radio crackles to life. Mayday, Mayday. 3 hikers stranded on Eagle's Peak. Hypothermia setting in. Weather closing fast. Need immediate airlift. My hands tremble, not from fear, but from the familiar surge of adrenaline that my reborn soul recognizes. The scent of aviation fuel and mountain pine floods my senses as I move toward the aircraft bay. This is what I was born to do. Again. Sarah, step back. Jake's voice cuts through my focus like a rusty blade. My older brother strides across the hangar, his rescue coordinator badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. You're not flying this mission. Marcus, my fiancé, nods from beside the weather station. His perfectly styled hair catches the light as he turns to face me with that patronizing smile I've grown to despise. The conditions are too dangerous for someone with your experience level. The familiar weight of doubt settles in my chest. In my previous life, I was Captain Sarah Stormwalker Chen, legendary rescue pilot who conquered impossible conditions. But in this life, I'm just Sarah Williams, the girl whose credentials everyone questions. I've logged over 500 hours, I counter, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. The metallic taste of frustration coats my tongue. My license is valid. Jake produces a manila folder from behind his back, his movements deliberate and theatrical. The papers inside rustle like dead leaves as he spreads them across the metal briefing table. Actually, Sarah, we need to talk about that. My heart plummets. The documents look official. Photocopies of certification records, training logs, even correspondence with the Federal Aviation Administration. But something's wrong. The dates don't match. The signatures look too perfect. These records show discrepancies, Jake announces to the gathering rescue team. His voice echoes off the hangar walls, each word a hammer blow to my reputation. Sarah's pilot certification appears to be questionable. Marcus steps forward, his leather jacket creaking as he crosses his arms. I've been suspicious for weeks. Her flying stories never quite added up. The rescue coordinator, a weathered man named Bill Henderson, examines the papers with furrowed brows. The sound of his breathing seems amplified in the sudden silence. Other team members whisper among themselves, their voices creating a buzz like angry insects. Sarah, Bill says carefully, I'm going to need you to step down from this mission until we can verify these documents. My reborn memories scream in protest. I know every wind pattern around Eagle's Peak. I've flown through storms that would ground entire squadrons. But in this moment, I'm powerless against their manufactured doubt. I'll take the mission, Marcus volunteers, puffing out his chest. I have my commercial license and 150 hours logged. 150 hours. In my previous life, I wouldn't have trusted someone with 150 hours to taxi an aircraft, let alone attempt a mountain rescue in deteriorating weather. But I force my expression to remain neutral as my pulse races. Marcus, I say quietly, the weather report shows I can handle it, he interrupts, already moving toward the rescue helicopter. The machine gleams red and white under the harsh lights, its rotors casting spiderweb shadows across the concrete floor. The team rallies around Marcus while I stand frozen by the briefing table. Jake's triumph radiates from him like heat from an engine. He's always resented my flying abilities, even when he believed they were limited to basic recreational flying. But I have quiet moves of my own. While Marcus performs his pre-flight checks with showy precision, I slip away to the weather station. My fingers dance across the keyboard, accessing meteorological data that most pilots wouldn't know how to interpret. The satellite imagery tells a story that chills my reborn soul. Wind shear at 8,000 feet, ice formation at 9,500, and a temperature inversion that will create downdrafts capable of slamming aircraft into mountainsides. The conditions are beyond Marcus's skill level, way beyond. I discreetly photograph the weather data with my phone, the camera's soft click masked by the increasing noise of Marcus's helicopter spinning up. The documentation might prove useful later. Back in the hangar, the rescue team gathers for final briefing. Jake stands at the center like a general addressing his troops, his voice carrying over the helicopter's whine. Marcus will handle the airlift, he announces with authority that makes my stomach churn. Sarah will remain grounded pending investigation of her credentials. Several team members glance at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. The scent of hot coffee from someone's travel mug mingles with the sharp smell of hydraulic fluid, creating an oddly comforting blend that reminds me of countless pre-mission briefings from my previous life. Jake, I try one more time, keeping my voice level. Those weather conditions? Sarah's always been a dreamer, not a real pilot. Jake interrupts, his words landing like physical blows. She reads about flying, talks about flying, but when it comes to actual skill, he shrugs dismissively, and the public humiliation burns through me like acid. Several rescue team members nod in agreement, their faith in my abilities crumbling under Jake's systematic character assassination. Marcus approaches, his flight suit rustling with each step. He places what he probably thinks is a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Don't worry, sweetheart, I'll handle this one. You can watch and learn. The condescension in his voice ignites something deep in my reborn consciousness. Captain Sarah Chen never tolerated such disrespect, and neither will I. But for now, I smile and nod. Let them think I'm defeated. The helicopter lifts off into increasingly gray skies, its rotor wash stirring up dust and debris across the tarmac. I watch from the hangar doorway as Marcus struggles to maintain steady flight, even in the relatively calm air near the base. My reborn instincts scream warnings that no one will hear. The first sign of trouble comes 20 minutes after takeoff. I'm sitting in the briefing room, surrounded by the soft hum of radio equipment and the occasional shuffle of papers. The rescue team has dispersed, leaving me alone with my supposed failure. Jake disappeared somewhere, probably celebrating his victory over his delusional sister. Base, this is Rescue 1. Marcus's voice crackles through the radio, tension bleeding through the static. Encountering some turbulence here. I lean forward, my fingernails digging into the plastic chair. The sound of wind interference on his transmission tells me everything I need to know. He's flying directly into the weather system I warned him about. Copy Rescue 1, Bill Henderson responds from the communication station. Can you adjust altitude? Negative, trying to maintain 8,000 feet. Marcus's breathing is audible now, quick and shallow. The professional composure he displayed during takeoff is cracking like ice on a warming lake. My reborn memories surface unbidden. The feeling of aircraft shuddering in wind shear, the split-second decisions required to navigate mountain thermals, the intimate knowledge of how machines and weather interact at altitude. Marcus has none of this experience. I pull out my phone and begin recording the radio transmissions. The evidence might prove useful later. Base, I'm having some control issues here, Marcus admits, his voice climbing an octave. The aircraft is not responding normally. The room falls silent except for the steady hiss of radio static. Even Bill looks concerned now, his weathered hands gripping the microphone tighter. I appear passive, sitting quietly in my chair like a chastened student. But my mind races through calculations. Wind speed, aircraft performance limitations, fuel consumption rates. Marcus filed a flight plan claiming expertise he doesn't possess, and now reality is exposing his lies. Marcus, I call out, unable to remain silent. What's your current heading? Sarah, you're not authorized. Bill starts. 315 degrees. Marcus interrupts, desperation overriding protocol. My blood freezes. That heading takes him directly through Devil's Canyon, where wind shear has claimed 6 aircraft in the past decade. I check the weather data on my phone. Conditions have deteriorated exactly as predicted. You need to adjust to 280 immediately, I say urgently. Sarah! Jake's voice booms from the doorway. He storms into the briefing room, his face flushed with anger. You're grounded. Stop interfering. But it's too late. Marcus has already changed course, and his panicked breathing tells me he's realizing the magnitude of his mistake. Base, I'm experiencing severe downdrafts, Marcus reports, his voice now openly frightened. Altitude dropping rapidly. I need immediate assistance. The emergency that was always going to happen has arrived. Jake's face drains of color as the implications hit him. His golden boy fiancé, the man he supported over his own sister, is in mortal danger because Jake's ego blinded him to the truth. Can you return to base? Bill asks, professional calm masking growing alarm. A negative. Weather between me and base has deteriorated. I can't wait. Static drowns out Marcus's voice for several heart-stopping seconds. Engine warning light. I'm losing power. The radio falls silent. Rescue 1, please respond. Bill calls. Marcus, do you copy? Nothing but empty static fills the room. The sound reminds me of my previous life's final moments. Radio silence before everything went black. Jake paces like a caged animal, his boots clicking against the concrete floor. He'll be fine, he mutters. Marcus is a good pilot. He'll figure it out. But I know better. Marcus filed a false flight plan, claiming familiarity with routes he's never flown. He exaggerated his experience and downplayed the weather conditions. Now he's paying the price for lies that Jake encouraged. Jake, I say quietly, we need to organize a search and rescue operation. With what? He snaps. Marcus has our primary rescue aircraft. The cruel irony hangs in the air like smoke. They grounded their most capable pilot to give the mission to someone whose incompetence has now created a second emergency. I can fly, I offer again, my voice steady despite the chaos erupting around me. Absolutely not. Jake's voice cracks like a whip. Your credentials are questionable, and I won't risk another aircraft on your delusions. Bill Henderson looks between us, conflict etched on his weathered features. The radio crackles with intermittent static, each burst of noise a reminder that somewhere in the mountains, people are dying because of pride and prejudice. My phone buzzes. I check it discreetly and find what I've been waiting for. Marcus's flight recorder data automatically uploaded to the base's computer system. His actual flight path shows he's been lying about his position, probably trying to look more competent than he actually is. Now I have evidence of everything. His falsified flight plan, his panicked radio calls, his complete inability to handle the conditions I warned him about. There, Jake points at my phone accusingly. She's been monitoring our communications. Sarah probably sabotaged something before takeoff. The accusation hits like a physical blow. Several rescue team members turn to stare at me with suspicion, their expressions shifting from pity to hostility. That's ridiculous, I protest. I was trying to help. Were you? Jake advances on me, his face twisted with grief and rage. Marcus was fine until you started giving him directions. Maybe you wanted him to crash. The room erupts in murmurs and whispers. Bill Henderson holds up his hand for silence, but doubt has already taken root. My own brother is painting me as a saboteur, a jealous woman willing to commit murder for revenge. Check the aircraft logs, I say desperately. I never went near that helicopter. But you had access, Jake counters. You've been here all morning. Who knows what you might have done? The character assassination continues while precious minutes tick away. Somewhere in the mountains, Marcus fights for his life, and the original rescue targets grow closer to death with each passing moment. But I'm no longer the helpless victim they think I am. While Jake rants about my supposed sabotage, I've been using my phone to access weather patterns and satellite data that most pilots don't even know exist. My reborn knowledge guides me through navigation systems that seem impossibly complex to others. The radio crackles back to life, making everyone freeze. Base, this is Rescue 1. Marcus's voice is weak, punctuated by what sounds like electrical interference. Aircraft down. I'm alive, but can't reach controls. Need immediate assistance. Relief and panic war on Jake's face. Marcus is alive, but trapped somewhere in the mountains with weather conditions preventing standard rescue operations. Can you give us your location? Bill asks urgently. I don't know exact position. GPS is... The transmission cuts out again. Jake turns to me with desperation replacing his earlier anger. Sarah, I know you're upset, but if you really can help... No. My voice is calm, cold, final. You questioned my credentials. You accused me of sabotage. You chose Marcus over me. But people are dying. Because of your choices, I remind him. Not mine. The truth burns between us like fire. Jake's pride and jealousy created this situation. His need to diminish me led directly to Marcus's crash and the continued suffering of the original rescue targets. But I'm not done yet. My quiet countermoves are just beginning. The second emergency call arrives like Judgment Day. Alpine Rescue Base, this is Ranger Station 7. A new voice cuts through the tension. Our hikers on Eagle's Peak are critical. Hypothermia is setting in fast. We need immediate airlift or we're looking at fatalities within the hour. Bill Henderson's face turns ashen. The original rescue mission, the one that started this entire disaster, has become a race against time while our primary aircraft lies somewhere in the mountains, with its pilot trapped inside. Copy, Ranger 7. Bill responds. We're experiencing aircraft difficulties. Stand by. Jake whirls on me like a tornado of rage and desperation. This is your fault, he snarls. If you hadn't interfered with Marcus's flight, he'd be completing the original mission right now. The accusation is so absurd it takes my breath away. I stare at my brother, really look at him, and see a man so consumed by his need to be right that he'll sacrifice lives to avoid admitting his mistakes. My fault! I keep my voice level despite the fury building inside me. I warned you about the weather. I warned you about Marcus's inexperience. You chose not to listen. You sabotaged his aircraft, Jake insists, his voice growing louder. You've always been jealous of Marcus, jealous that he succeeded where you failed. Several team members nod in agreement. The seed of doubt Jake planted earlier has grown into full-blown suspicion. I can see it in their faces. The willingness to believe that a woman scorned might commit murder for revenge. That's enough, Bill Henderson intervenes, but his authority rings hollow. The damage is already done. Actually, it's not enough, Jake continues, his eyes bright with fanatical certainty. Sarah has been acting suspicious all morning. She had access to the aircraft. She knew exactly which route Marcus would take. My reborn memories stir with familiar rage. In my previous life, I faced this same kind of discrimination. Men who couldn't accept that a woman might outfly them. Bureaucrats who questioned every achievement. Colleagues who attributed success to luck rather than skill. But I won't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. While Jake builds his case against me, I discreetly check the secure files on my phone. Hidden behind encrypted passwords lie documents that would shock everyone in this room. Military commendations, international rescue certifications, flight records from operations these small-town heroes couldn't imagine. Sarah's license documentation was falsified, Jake announces to the room. Her flight experience is probably exaggerated. And now, when we need aircraft for real emergencies, she's created a situation where our primary rescue helicopter is down. The coordinator looks uncomfortable but nods slowly. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises, Sarah, and I'll be filing a report with the aviation authorities about possible equipment tampering. The threat lands like a hammer blow. They're not just grounding me, they're trying to destroy my ability to fly anywhere, ever. You have no evidence, I say quietly. We have suspicious circumstances and your obvious emotional instability. Jake counters, that's enough for an investigation. Security arrives. 2 local deputies who eye me like I'm a dangerous criminal. The metallic click of handcuffs on their belt sounds unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. Ma'am, we need you to come with us, one deputy says apologetically. Just for questioning. This is the moment when most people would break down, plead their innocence, beg for another chance. But I'm not most people. My reborn soul has endured worse humiliations and emerged stronger. I stand slowly, gathering my jacket and phone with deliberate calm. Every eye in the room watches me, some with pity, others with satisfaction at seeing the troublemaker removed. Before I go, I say, my voice carrying across the room like steel wrapped in silk, I want everyone to remember this moment. Remember that you chose pride over competence. Remember that you valued appearances over expertise. Jake scoffs. More of your delusions of grandeur. Remember, I continue, ignoring his interruption, that when people needed rescue, you grounded the pilot who could have saved them. The deputies escort me toward the exit, their boots echoing on the concrete floor. But I'm not broken. I'm liberated. Because while they've been busy destroying my reputation, I've been planning my real move. My personal hangar sits 2 miles away, housing an aircraft these small-minded fools don't even know exists. Military-grade equipment, advanced navigation systems, and capabilities that make their standard rescue helicopter look like a child's toy. The radio crackles one more time as we reach the door. Base, this is Ranger 7 again. Our hikers are unconscious. Repeat, unconscious from exposure. If we don't get airlift in the next 30 minutes, we're going to lose them. Jake's face crumbles as the full weight of his decisions crashes down on him. No aircraft, no pilots he trusts, no time left for second chances. Wait, he calls out desperately. Sarah, wait! I pause at the threshold, not turning around. The mountain wind carries the scent of approaching snow and the distant sound of helicopters, probably news crews responding to reports of missing aircraft. You want me to help? I ask calmly. Yes, please, I'll apologize. I'll admit I was wrong about the documents. And Marcus? What about Marcus? Are you withdrawing your accusations of sabotage? The silence stretches like a taut wire. Jake can't bring himself to admit complete defeat, even with lives hanging in the balance. The evidence still suggests. Then you have your answer, I interrupt and walk out into the wind. The deputies follow me to their car, but I can feel the weight of everyone's stares burning into my back. Let them stare. Let them wonder. In 30 minutes, they'll understand exactly what kind of pilot they just dismissed. But first, I have equipment to retrieve and a reputation to reclaim. The satisfaction of my quiet countermove spreads through my chest like warmth from a good fire. They think they've won, but they've only succeeded in forcing me to reveal my true capabilities. Soon, the entire aviation community will know the name Sarah Chen again. And Jake will learn that some betrayals carry consequences that last lifetimes. The deputies release me with apologetic warnings about staying away from Alpine Rescue Base. Nothing personal, ma'am, the younger officer says as he unlocks the handcuffs. Just doing our job. I understand, I reply, rubbing circulation back into my wrists. Everyone's just doing their job. But as their patrol car disappears down the mountain highway, my calm facade finally cracks. Not from despair, from anticipation. They have no idea what they've just set in motion. My personal hangar sits nestled in a grove of pine trees, invisible from the main road. The scent of evergreen and motor oil greets me as I punch in the security code. LED lights flicker to life, illuminating what Jake would never believe if he saw it. A military-grade rescue helicopter sits gleaming under the fluorescent bulbs, matte black with subtle gray markings, its lines sleek and predatory. This isn't the civilian aircraft they use at Alpine Rescue. This is a machine built for impossible missions. My fingers trace the aircraft's hull as memories flood back. Captain Sarah Stormwalker Chen didn't die in a hospital bed or retire to a quiet life. She died in a heroic rescue operation, saving 12 people from a typhoon in the South China Sea. And somehow, impossibly, her consciousness was reborn in this small-town pilot's body. The aircraft responds to my touch like a familiar friend. Advanced navigation systems, weather radar that can see through storms, winch capabilities rated for heavy rescue operations in impossible conditions. Everything I need to prove once and for all what kind of pilot I really am. I move to a hidden safe behind a false wall panel. The steel door opens with a soft pneumatic hiss, revealing documents that would shock the aviation world. Military commendations signed by generals, international rescue certifications from operations in 6 countries, flight records documenting rescues in conditions that civilian pilots consider suicidal. All under the name Sarah Chen, my phone buzzes with an encrypted message from my former military contacts. Word travels fast in the aviation community, and my old squadron has heard about the situation developing in Colorado. Stormwalker, the message reads, satellite shows your bird is still grounded. Need assist? I smile, typing back quickly. Negative, local situation requires delicate handling. Will advise. Copy. Weather satellite shows severe conditions your area. We have assets if needed. Understood. Chen out. The exchange takes less than 30 seconds, but it represents a lifeline to resources these mountain rescue teams couldn't imagine. When you've commanded international rescue operations, small-town politics become laughably transparent. I begin my pre-flight check with muscle memory that spans 2 lifetimes. Every switch, every gauge, every system responds to hands that know exactly what they're doing. The aircraft's turbine spools up with a distinctive whine that sounds like freedom. The radio crackles with increasing urgency from Alpine Rescue Base. Marcus's emergency beacon has gone silent. The original rescue targets are minutes from death, and Jake's world is collapsing around his stubborn pride. Base, this is Colonel Martinez from Peterson Air Force Base. A new voice cuts through the chatter. We're tracking an emergency situation in your area. Do you require military assistance? My blood surges with vindication. Colonel Martinez commanded my unit in the previous life. His presence means someone with real authority is paying attention to this disaster. Negative, Colonel, Bill Henderson responds nervously. We have the situation under control. Copy, Base. However, we're showing no active rescue aircraft in your sector. Please advise on mission status. The pause that follows tells me everything. Bill can't admit they grounded their most qualified pilot and lost their primary aircraft to incompetence. We're reorganizing our response, Bill finally answers. Understood. Be advised, we have assets in the area if needed. We're also tracking several private aircraft that might be able to assist. There's a pilot designation Stormwalker showing active in your sector. I laugh out loud in my cockpit. Even my old military call sign is still flagged in the system, linked to my current location through GPS and aircraft registration. Jake's voice cuts through the radio traffic. Colonel, this is Jake Williams, Operations Coordinator. We're not familiar with any Stormwalker designation. Interesting, Colonel Martinez replies with a tone that suggests he knows exactly who Stormwalker is. Shows is cleared for emergency operations, highest authorization level. Military decorated, international certified, definitely someone you'd want on a mountain rescue. The silence from Alpine Rescue Base stretches for long seconds. I can picture Jake's confusion and growing dread as he realizes there might be resources he doesn't understand. Colonel, Jake finally responds, we've had some issues with falsified credentials today. How can we verify this Stormwalker pilot? Easy enough. We'll contact them directly. My secure radio activates immediately. Stormwalker, this is Colonel Martinez. You there? Copy, Colonel. This is Stormwalker. Good to hear your voice. Sarah! The recognition in his voice carries across the airwaves. Thought that might be you. Heard you were having some local difficulties. Nothing I can't handle, sir. Outstanding. Be advised, we're monitoring the emergency situation. You have full authorization for any rescue operations deemed necessary. The transmission ends, but its implications will reverberate through Alpine Rescue Base like an earthquake. Jake just learned that his supposedly incompetent sister has direct contact with military command authority. I complete my final system checks as the radio explodes with a confused chatter. Bill Henderson demands explanations that no one can provide. Jake's voice grows increasingly shrill as he tries to understand how his grounded sister might have military connections. But I'm done explaining myself to small minds. The hangar doors open with a mechanical rumble, revealing a world painted in shades of gray by approaching storms. Wind whips through the opening, carrying the sharp scent of snow and the distant sound of my destiny calling. My aircraft lifts off into the turbulent sky with smooth precision that would make my previous squadron proud. Every control input, every adjustment for wind and weather flows from instincts honed across 2 lifetimes of impossible rescues. The radio comes alive with shocked voices as my helicopter appears on their radar screens. Unknown aircraft, this is Alpine Rescue Base. Identify yourself immediately. I key my microphone with deliberate calm. Alpine Rescue, this is Stormwalker. I'm declaring an emergency and assuming rescue operations for all stranded personnel. Stormwalker, Sarah, but you're grounded. Negative, Alpine Rescue. I'm exactly where I belong. The mountain peaks rush past my windows as I climb toward conditions that sent Marcus fleeing in panic. But these aren't just any mountains to me. They're the same peaks I've conquered in dreams and memories, the terrain I've mastered in a previous life. Time to show them what a real pilot can do. The storm that defeated Marcus feels like coming home. My helicopter slices through wind shear that would tumble lesser aircraft like leaves. The advanced weather radar paints the turbulence in vivid colors on my displays, but my reborn instincts guide me through gaps in the chaos that instruments alone could never reveal. Stormwalker, this is Alpine Rescue Base. Bill Henderson's voice crackles through the radio, barely audible over the wind noise. You are not authorized for this rescue operation. Copy, Alpine Base, I reply calmly, adjusting power settings to compensate for a downdraft. Authorization comes from higher authority than yours. The radio falls silent, except for the whisper of static. Below me, the mountainous terrain unfolds in stark beauty. Jagged peaks shrouded in cloud, valleys carved by ancient glaciers, and somewhere in this wilderness, people who need rescuing. My navigation systems lock onto Marcus's emergency beacon. The signal is weak but steady, broadcasting from a location that makes my blood chill. Devil's Canyon, the same wind shear trap that I tried to warn him about. I have Marcus's position, I announce on the rescue frequency. Coordinates follow. I transmit the location data while simultaneously plotting my approach. The canyon creates a natural wind tunnel that amplifies the storm's power exponentially. Most pilots would consider the rescue impossible in these conditions, but I'm not most pilots. The descent into Devil's Canyon requires precision that borders on artistry. I bank through the narrow opening between rock walls, my rotors clearing jagged outcroppings by mere feet. The sound of wind screaming past stone mingles with the steady thrum of my turbine. Marcus's helicopter sits crumpled against a boulder field, its bright red paint stark against gray stone. The aircraft is intact enough that survival is possible, but positioned where standard rescue techniques would never work. Base, I have visual on Rescue 1. I report. Aircraft down, but pilot appears to be moving. Stormwalker. Jake's voice cuts in, tight with conflicting emotions. How did you find him so fast? Experience, I reply simply. I maneuver my helicopter into a hover above the crash site, fighting downdrafts that try to slam me into the canyon walls. This is the kind of flying that separates professionals from amateurs, reading the invisible currents of air, anticipating the mountain's attempts to kill you, dancing with forces that have claimed dozens of aircraft over the years. Through the plexiglass windscreen, I see Marcus waving frantically from beside his wrecked machine. He's alive, but clearly injured, his movements stiff and careful. Blood streaks one side of his face. The rescue basket deploys on its cable, spinning as crosswinds grab it. I make minute adjustments to position, using skills that Marcus could never master. The ability to maintain precise hover in conditions that would defeat most military pilots. Marcus, this is Stormwalker. I call on the emergency frequency. Getting in the basket. Do not delay. His response comes back weak and shaky. Sarah, is that... How are you? Questions later. Rescue now. I watch through my cameras as Marcus struggles into the rescue basket, his confusion evident even from this distance. He kept insisting I wasn't qualified to fly in calm conditions, yet here I am executing a rescue that his incompetence made necessary. The winch brings him up slowly, fighting the canyon's attempts to dash him against stone walls. Every second requires constant correction, adjusting position, compensating for wind, protecting my human cargo from forces that want to destroy us both. When Marcus finally slides into my aircraft's cabin, his face is white with shock and pain. Blood from a scalp wound has clotted in his perfectly styled hair, and his expensive flight suit is torn and dirty. Sarah, he gasps, I don't understand. How are you flying in this weather? How did you find me so fast? I don't answer immediately. My attention focuses on extracting us from Devil's Canyon without becoming another crash statistic. The climb out requires even more precision than the descent, threading between downdrafts while carrying extra weight, reading wind patterns that shift like living things. Only when we clear the canyon rim do I respond to his question. Maybe you don't know me as well as you thought. The flight back toward Alpine Base takes us over Eagle's Peak, where 3 hikers wait for rescue that was delayed by Marcus's arrogance and Jake's prejudice. Their situation has deteriorated past critical. The weather report shows temperatures dropping toward fatal levels. Base, this is Stormwalker, I announce, proceeding to original rescue target after Marcus delivery. Negative. Jake's voice explodes through the radio. Weather conditions are beyond safe parameters. Return to base immediately. Copy your concern, Base. Continuing with rescue operation. Sarah, you can't. There's genuine panic in Jake's voice now. Those conditions will kill you. The irony would be funny if people weren't dying. Jake grounded me for being unqualified, then begs me not to fly when the mission becomes dangerous. He wants the competence but refuses to acknowledge the skill. Base, I reply calmly. I'm exactly where I belong. The approach to Eagle's Peak requires every technique I've mastered across 2 lifetimes. The mountain creates its own weather system, generating winds that spiral upward in lethal columns. Ice forms on my windscreen faster than the heating elements can clear it. Marcus watches from the passenger compartment with growing amazement. Sarah, this is impossible flying. Where did you learn this? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. The rescue site comes into view. 3 figures huddled against an outcropping of rock. Their bright orange emergency gear the only color. In a world painted gray by storm clouds. They're not moving much, which means hypothermia has advanced to dangerous stages. Landing on the peak is impossible. No flat ground, too much wind, too many obstacles. But landing isn't necessary when you have the right equipment and training. I bring my helicopter into a hover 50 feet above the hikers, fighting gusts that try to dash us against the mountainside. The rescue basket deploys again, this time loaded with emergency medical supplies and thermal blankets. This is Stormwalker, I announce on the emergency frequency. 3-person rescue commencing. Stand by for basket deployment. The first hiker barely has strength to get into the basket. Hypothermia has stolen most of his coordination, leaving him fumbling with simple movements. I maintain perfect position while thermal currents from the heated rock try to throw us into the void. One by one, the hikers come up. Each extraction requires 15 minutes of precise flying in conditions that most pilots would never attempt. My turbine runs hot from the constant power adjustments, but the machine responds to my commands like an extension of my will. By the time the 3rd hiker reaches my cabin, my fuel reserves are running low and the storm has intensified to truly dangerous levels. But everyone is alive, wrapped in thermal blankets, receiving medical attention from supplies that standard rescue operations don't carry. Stormwalker, this is Colonel Martinez. The military frequency crackles to life. Outstanding work out there. We've been monitoring your operations. Thank you, sir. Returning to base with survivors. Copy that. Be advised, you've got quite an audience waiting for you. The flight back to Alpine Base takes us through the heart of the storm. Wind shear bounces us around the sky like a toy, but my passengers remain secure in their seats. Marcus stares at me with an expression I've never seen before, something between awe and terror. Sarah, he says quietly, who are you really? I smile without taking my eyes off the instruments. Someone you should have listened to. As Alpine Base comes into view, I can see crowds gathered on the tarmac. Emergency vehicles, news crews, and what looks like military personnel create a sea of flashing lights against the gray afternoon. My helicopter touches down with the gentleness of a feather despite the crosswinds trying to slam us sideways. The rotors wind down slowly, their decreasing whine replaced by the sound of approaching voices and footsteps on concrete. Through my windscreen, I see Jake standing with Bill Henderson and several other rescue team members. Their faces display a mixture of shock, confusion, and something that might be dawning respect. But it's the military officers approaching my aircraft that really capture my attention. Colonel Martinez leads a small group wearing Air Force insignia, their bearing unmistakably professional. Ma'am, one of the paramedics calls out as my passengers disembark. These people need immediate medical attention. I watch as the 3 hikers are loaded onto stretchers, their faces pale but alert. They'll survive because I reached them in time. Marcus limps toward the medical team, refusing a stretcher but accepting support from a paramedic. Incredible flying, the paramedic tells me as he passes. We've never seen anyone operate in conditions like that. Colonel Martinez reaches my aircraft as I complete my shutdown procedures. He waits respectfully until the rotors stop completely before approaching the pilot's door. Captain Chen, he says formally, using my previous life's rank. Permission to come aboard? Granted, sir. He climbs into the cockpit, his experienced eyes taking in the advanced instrumentation and military-grade equipment. Impressive bird you've got here. Not exactly what most civilian rescue operations have access to. No, sir, it isn't. I think it's time for some explanations, don't you? I nod, finally ready to reveal the truth that will change everything. Yes, sir, I believe it is. The crowd outside grows larger as word spreads about the impossible rescue. I can see Jake pushing through the gathering, his face a mask of confusion and desperate curiosity. Colonel Martinez activates his radio. Base, this is Martinez. I need the full file on Captain Sarah Chen transmitted to my location immediately. Copy, sir. Transmitting now. His tablet lights up with pages of documentation, military service records, commendations, flight logs from operations across 3 continents. My previous life laid out in official format, impossible to dispute or dismiss. Says here you died in a typhoon rescue operation 18 months ago, he observes quietly. Yes, sir, I did. And yet, here you are. Here I am. He studies the records for several more minutes, occasionally glancing at me with the expression of a man trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Outside, I can hear Jake demanding answers from anyone who will listen. This is classified information, Colonel Martinez finally says. Above top secret clearance required. How do you explain your access to these records? Because they're mine, sir. Those are my missions, my commendations, my aircraft lost over the South China Sea. He leans back in his seat, processing implications that challenge everything he understands about reality. If that's true, and I'm not saying I believe it, then you're one of the most decorated rescue pilots in military history. Yes, sir, I am. And these people grounded you because they thought your credentials were fake. They thought a lot of things about me that weren't true. Colonel Martinez shakes his head slowly. Sarah, what I'm about to do is probably going to create some very uncomfortable situations for the people who doubted you. I understand, sir. He climbs out of my aircraft and walks toward the crowd. Jake immediately rushes over, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. Colonel, I need to understand what's happening here. My sister Sarah claims to be some kind of elite pilot, but her documentation doesn't check out. We had to ground her because... Mr. Williams, Colonel Martinez interrupts, his voice carrying the authority of absolute command. Your sister is Captain Sarah Chen, one of the most highly decorated rescue pilots in United States military history. The words hit Jake like physical blows. He staggers backward, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to follow. That's impossible, he whispers. She's my little sister. She flies recreational aircraft on weekends. Mr. Williams, Captain Chen has logged over 3,000 hours in combat and emergency rescue operations. She's saved more than 200 lives in conditions that would ground entire squadrons. Bill Henderson approaches cautiously, his weathered face pale with shock. Colonel, are you saying Sarah is military? I'm saying Captain Chen is a legend in the rescue aviation community. Her call sign, Stormwalker, is known throughout international emergency operations. The crowd falls silent except for the wind whistling across the tarmac. Jake's world is crumbling around him as the implications sink in. His incompetent little sister is actually one of the world's elite pilots. But her credentials, Jake protests weakly, the documentation we found showed inconsistencies. Colonel Martinez fixes him with a stare that could melt steel. What documentation? Jake produces the manila folder with shaking hands. Colonel Martinez examines the papers with growing disgust, his professional composure slipping toward anger. Mr. Williams, these documents are obvious forgeries, crude ones. Anyone with actual aviation authority would spot them immediately. Forgeries? Jake's voice cracks, but I found them in Sarah's files. You mean you planted them? I say quietly, stepping out of my aircraft. Every eye turns to me as I approach the group. The scent of jet fuel and mountain air fills my lungs, reminding me of countless other moments when truth finally emerged from lies. You forged those documents, Jake, I continue, my voice carrying across the silent crowd. You've always resented my flying abilities. When you heard about the rescue mission, you saw an opportunity to discredit me permanently. That's not true, Jake protests, but his voice lacks conviction. Then explain how crude forgeries ended up in official files that only you had access to. The silence that follows is deafening. Jake's mouth opens and closes without sound, his entire justification collapsing under the weight of evidence. Marcus appears at the edge of the crowd, moving carefully on his injured leg. His expensive flight suit is still torn and bloody, a visible reminder of what happens when incompetence meets reality. Sarah, he calls out, I need to understand. If you're really this Stormwalker person, why didn't you tell us? I turn to face my former fiancé. This man who thought 150 hours qualified him to second-guess someone with my experience. Would you have believed me? I ask simply. Would any of you have believed that the woman you dismissed could fly circles around your best pilots? Marcus has no answer. The truth burns between us like fire. He would never have accepted my capabilities because accepting them meant acknowledging his own limitations. Colonel Martinez steps forward, his voice cutting through the tension. Ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed one of the most technically difficult rescue operations I've ever seen. Captain Chen extracted 4 people from conditions that our weather service classified as unsurvivable for aircraft operations. Bill Henderson clears his throat uncomfortably. Colonel, we had no way of knowing Sarah's true qualifications. The documentation we received suggested... The documentation you received was fabricated by someone with access to your files. Colonel Martinez interrupts. Someone who wanted to discredit one of America's finest pilots. All eyes turn back to Jake, who stands frozen like a deer in headlights. The weight of his actions, the falsified documents, the public humiliation, the accusations of sabotage, crashes down on him with devastating force. Jake, I say quietly, people almost died because of your pride. He opens his mouth to respond, but no words come. What defense exists for jealousy that masquerades as leadership? What justification covers sabotage disguised as safety concerns? The crowd begins to murmur as the full scope of the scandal becomes clear. Jake Williams, respected rescue coordinator, deliberately grounded the most qualified pilot available because he couldn't accept his sister's superiority. Marcus takes a tentative step toward me, his face a mask of regret and dawning understanding. Sarah, I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have supported you. But apologies can't undo the damage. They can't restore trust that was deliberately shattered or repair relationships poisoned by systematic deception. You should have listened, I agree. All of you should have listened. The mountain wind picks up, carrying with it the promise of more storms to come. But I'm no longer afraid of weather or of small minds that try to diminish what they can't understand. The apologies begin before the crowd fully disperses. Jake approaches me with tears streaming down his face, his earlier arrogance replaced by desperate remorse. The scent of his fear mingles with the lingering aviation fuel in the air as he reaches out with trembling hands. Sarah, please, he begs, his voice breaking like a teenager's. I can explain everything. I was trying to protect you. I regard my brother with the calm detachment of someone who has seen too much betrayal to be surprised by its depths. Protect me from what, Jake? From failure, from embarrassment. The words pour out of him like a dam bursting. You've always been so confident about flying, but I was afraid you'd get hurt if you attempted something beyond your abilities. The lie tastes bitter in the mountain air. Even now, facing the wreckage of his credibility, Jake can't admit the simple truth. He sabotaged me because my success made him feel inadequate. So you forged documents to discredit me, I state calmly. I thought, if you were grounded temporarily, you'd be safe. I never meant for Marcus to crash. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. Colonel Martinez watches this exchange with the expression of a man cataloging evidence for future proceedings. His tablet records everything, building a case that will follow Jake for the rest of his career. Jake, I say quietly, you didn't just forge documents. You accused me of sabotage. You tried to have me arrested. I panicked, he sobs. When Marcus went down, I needed someone to blame. I couldn't admit that I was wrong about everything. The admission hangs in the air like smoke from a crashed aircraft. Jake Williams, respected rescue coordinator, confessing to fraud and character assassination in front of military officers and news cameras. Marcus limps forward, his injured leg forcing him to lean on a paramedic for support. Blood has dried on his face, and his expensive flight suit bears tears that will never mend properly. Sarah, he says, his voice soft with what might be genuine remorse. I owe you my life. If you hadn't found me in that canyon, you'd be dead. I finish for him. Along with 3 innocent hikers who waited while you crashed in conditions I warned you about. He flinches at the blunt assessment but doesn't argue. How can he? The evidence speaks for itself. His incompetence nearly killed 5 people, including himself. I want to make this right, Marcus continues. We can start over. I'll support your career, help you get the recognition you deserve. We can still be married. The proposal is so absurd it takes my breath away. He wants to resume our engagement as if nothing has changed, as if his betrayal was just a misunderstanding that can be smoothed over with proper apologies. Marcus, I say with infinite patience. You spent this morning explaining to everyone why I wasn't qualified to fly. You nodded when Jake accused me of sabotage. You volunteered to take a mission you knew was beyond your abilities because you couldn't accept that I might be better than you. I made mistakes, he admits. But I love you, Sarah. That has to count for something. What you love is the idea of me, I correct. You love a version of me that stays safely in your shadow, that doesn't threaten your ego with inconvenient competence. Bill Henderson clears his throat, stepping forward with the uncomfortable air of a man trying to salvage what's left of his organization's reputation. Sarah, he begins formally, I want to offer you the position of Chief Rescue Pilot, full authority over all aviation operations, complete autonomy in mission planning, and a salary commensurate with your obvious expertise. The offer represents everything I supposedly wanted: recognition, authority, respect from the people who dismissed me. But it comes wrapped in desperation and tainted by the knowledge that they're only offering it because they were publicly humiliated. You're offering me a job at the organization that tried to have me arrested for sabotage, I observe. That was a misunderstanding, Bill says quickly. If we'd known your true qualifications. You had access to my real credentials, I interrupt. They were available through standard aviation databases. You chose to believe forged documents because they confirmed your preconceptions. The truth burns between us like acid rain. They didn't investigate my background because they never imagined a woman from their small community might possess world-class skills. Colonel Martinez steps forward, his military bearing commanding immediate attention. Captain Chen, I have been authorized to offer you reinstatement to active duty with immediate promotion to major. Your country needs pilots with your capabilities. The offer is tempting. A return to the world where my skills are properly valued, where mission success matters more than local politics. But even the military couldn't protect me from the prejudices that led to my previous death. Thank you, Colonel, I reply respectfully. But I've already accepted a position with international emergency response. The announcement hits the crowd like a lightning strike. IER is the elite organization that handles disasters too dangerous for national governments, the kind of missions that require pilots willing to risk everything for strangers they'll never meet. Sarah, wait, Jake pleads desperately. Don't leave like this, we're family. I turn to face my brother one final time. The man who raised me after our parents died, who taught me to fly my first aircraft, who destroyed my reputation because he couldn't bear to see me succeed. Family doesn't forge documents to sabotage each other, I say quietly. Family doesn't choose pride over competence when lives are at stake. I'll make it right, he promises. I'll confess everything publicly. I'll make sure everyone knows you're the real hero here. Jake, you still don't understand. This isn't about recognition or credit. This is about trust. Then tell me how to rebuild it. I study his face, really look at him, and see a man so consumed by his own inadequacies that he nearly committed murder through willful negligence. The brother I loved died the moment he chose to destroy me, rather than celebrate my success. You can't, I say simply. Some betrayals are permanent. The words hit him like physical blows. He staggers backward, finally understanding that his actions have consequences that extend beyond temporary embarrassment. Marcus makes one last desperate attempt. Sarah, please, I know I was wrong about everything, but we can work through this. Love conquers all, right? I remove my engagement ring, the symbol of promises built on lies and maintained through systematic deception. The diamond catches the gray light as I place it in his palm. Love without respect isn't love, I tell him. It's possession disguised as affection. The ring sits in his hand like a small weight of failed dreams. All his plans for our future built on the assumption that I would remain safely inferior to his mediocre abilities. I'm sorry, he whispers. I know you are, I reply. But sorry doesn't resurrect the people who might have died because of your arrogance. I walk toward my helicopter, leaving behind a crowd of people who finally understand what they've lost. The mountain wind carries the scent of approaching snow and the distant sound of my future calling. Behind me, Jake calls out one final time. Sarah, where will you go? I pause at my aircraft's door, not turning around. Somewhere that judges pilots by their abilities, not their gender or their willingness to stay small. Will we ever see you again? The question hangs in the air like smoke from burning bridges. These people had every opportunity to support me, to trust me, to value what I offered. Instead, they chose comfort over competence and nearly paid with lives. Probably not, I answer honestly. The helicopter's door closes with a soft click, sealing me away from a world too small to contain my reborn capabilities. They'll learn to regret their choices, but that education will happen without me. Some lessons are too expensive to teach twice. 6 months later, I'm soaring above the Swiss Alps in conditions that would terrify most pilots. The rescue helicopter beneath me bears the distinctive markings of international emergency response, black and silver with understated efficiency that speaks volumes about the organization's priorities. No bright colors or flashy designs, just professional competence wrapped in carbon fiber and titanium. Stormwalker, this is IER base. The radio crackles with calm professionalism. We have confirmation on the avalanche victims. 6 skiers trapped at 4,200 meters, visibility near zero, winds gusting to 80 knots. Copy base, I respond, adjusting power settings for the thin air and brutal conditions. ETA 15 minutes. The mission represents everything I missed during my small-town exile. Pure focus on saving lives without politics, bureaucracy, or wounded egos interfering with operational efficiency. My team consists of the world's best rescue specialists, people chosen for competence rather than connections. Through my windscreen, the Alps stretch endlessly in crystalline beauty, marred by the gray smudge of avalanche debris. Somewhere beneath that chaos, 6 people wait for rescue that only my team can provide. My phone buzzes with an encrypted message from headquarters. Press inquiry about Colorado incident, standard denial or full disclosure? I smile, typing back quickly. Standard denial, ancient history. The Colorado story broke in aviation magazines 3 months ago when an investigative journalist uncovered the full scope of Jake's document forgery and the subsequent cover-up attempts. The article painted a devastating picture of small-town corruption and gender bias that cost lives and nearly destroyed one of America's finest pilots. Jake lost his coordinator position and faces federal charges for document fraud. Marcus disappeared from public view after the investigation revealed his falsified experience claims. Bill Henderson retired early rather than explain how his organization nearly killed people through willful ignorance. But their consequences don't concern me anymore. I'm exactly where I belong. Stormwalker, this is Alpine 7. A familiar voice cuts through my thoughts. We have emergency medical gear standing by for your arrival. Colonel Martinez maintained contact after the Colorado incident, helping facilitate my transition to international operations. His endorsement carried weight in circles where competence matters more than politics. Copy, Alpine 7. Good to hear your voice, sir. Outstanding work on the Siberian operation last month, by the way. Heard you extracted 12 people from conditions that grounded everyone else. Just doing the job, sir. The avalanche site comes into view, a scar of white debris against dark granite, recent enough that survivors might still have air pockets. My team deploys with practiced efficiency, each member knowing their role without need for excessive communication. The rescue requires 47 minutes of precise flying in conditions that push both machine and pilot to absolute limits. But when we lift off with all 6 survivors secured in thermal cocoons, the satisfaction burns through me like fire. This is what my reborn life was meant for, not proving myself to small minds, but using extraordinary abilities for extraordinary purposes. My secure phone rings as we clear the danger zone. The caller ID shows a number I recognize but haven't heard from in months. Hello, Marcus. Sarah. His voice carries the weight of 6 months' worth of regret and growing understanding. I saw the news about your promotion to IER section chief. Congratulations. Thank you. I also saw the article about what really happened in Colorado, about Jake's forgeries and the cover-up. I wanted you to know that I've been working with the investigators, providing testimony about what really occurred. The admission surprises me. Marcus was always more concerned with appearances than truth, but perhaps nearly dying in a mountain canyon provided some perspective. That's good to hear, I say neutrally. Sarah, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I've been going to therapy, working through why I felt so threatened by your abilities. why I couldn't just support you instead of competing with you. I hope that helps you. It's helped me understand that I never really knew you at all. I fell in love with some fantasy version of you that existed only in my head, someone who would stay safely in my shadow and make me feel important. The confession carries the ring of genuine insight rather than manipulation. Perhaps his near-death experience taught him something about the difference between ego and reality. The real you, he continues, the pilot who saved my life and rescued those hikers in impossible conditions, she deserved so much better than what I offered. Yes, she did. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve the chance to ask for it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I destroyed through my own insecurity. The call ends without dramatic declarations or desperate pleas. Just a man finally accepting responsibility for choices that cost him everything worth having. I delete his number from my phone and focus on the mountains rushing past my windows. An hour later, I'm back at IER headquarters, filing mission reports and preparing for the next emergency. The facility hums with quiet efficiency. No drama, no politics, just professionals doing work that matters. My assistant brings coffee and a folder of commendations from various governments. The Swiss want to give you their highest civilian honor, she mentions casually. Should I accept on your behalf? Whatever's appropriate, I reply, focused on weather patterns that might affect tomorrow's operations. Recognition feels different now, less about proving myself and more about acknowledging successful missions. The desperate need for validation that drove me in Colorado has been replaced by the quiet satisfaction of competence properly utilized. My phone buzzes with another message from Colonel Martinez. Heard through channels that your old hometown is having aviation troubles. 3 rescue coordinators quit in 6 months. Interested in consulting? I laugh out loud, imagining the chaos at Alpine Rescue Base without anyone qualified to run operations. Jake's departure created a leadership vacuum that no one seems capable of filling. Negative, I type back. Too many ghosts in those mountains. Copy that. Figured I'd ask. The conversation ends, but it reminds me of a lesson learned through pain and betrayal. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. Moving forward sometimes requires leaving entire worlds behind. Evening brings fresh snow to the Alps and the quiet satisfaction of another impossible mission completed successfully. I stand at my office window, watching flakes drift past the glass like memories too small to matter. Tomorrow will bring new emergencies, new chances to prove that reborn abilities can serve purposes greater than personal vindication. My team will deploy to situations that others consider hopeless, and we'll bring people home because that's what we do. The woman who once begged for acceptance from small minds is gone, replaced by someone who no longer needs validation from people too limited to recognize excellence when they see it. In the distance, I can hear the distinctive sound of helicopters returning from night training missions. My pilots honing skills that will save lives in conditions that civilian rescue services can't handle. They know nothing about my previous life, my reborn memories, or the brother who betrayed me in a small Colorado town. To them, I'm simply the section chief who can fly anything with rotors and extract people from impossible situations. That's enough, more than enough. The mountains call to me through the window, not with promises of redemption or opportunities for revenge, but with the simple invitation to do what I was reborn to do. Some stories end with dramatic confrontations and tearful reconciliations. Others end with quiet competence and the knowledge that we're exactly where we belong. I prefer the latter. The snow continues falling as I prepare tomorrow's mission briefings, each flake a reminder that storms eventually pass and clarity returns to those patient enough to wait for it. My phone stays silent. Jake doesn't call. Marcus doesn't text. The people who once doubted my abilities have learned to live with the consequences of their choices. And somewhere in the Swiss Alps, 6 people are alive tonight because competence matters more than pride, and skill transcends the limitations that small minds try to impose. That's legacy enough for any pilot, reborn or otherwise.